Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Goaltending, where your why is bigger than your excuses. Today is a very special, a very exciting episode. I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable because I brought in a very special guest to interview me, and I have no idea what questions are going to be asked yet. So I'm excited to see what comes from this. A little bit nervous, but before we get into it, first I just want to say thank you all for tuning in, allowing us to be a part of your journey. I want to encourage you to, find something throughout the episode to continue to learn, to continue to take action on in your life to help get where you're working toward being in your journey. And with that, I also want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor. This episode is fueled by Prepping with Peppers. Appreciate them for being a sponsor of the podcast. Now, without further ado, I'm very excited to be able to introduce today's guest. So without getting into any kind of professional background, really just an incredible human being, someone that I'm honored to be able to call my best friend in life, who has helped me through many hard times, who's seen me at my best times, my worst times. And when we came up with the idea and the concept of doing today's episode, it was really because she has been a pillar of helping me work through my emotional intelligence throughout my journey, and trying to learn patience. Looking at her as a very positive example of that, and really just being the person for me to lean on. So I'm very happy, excited to have you here, Brittany Bland. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here too, and a little nervous as well.
So I'm going to, at this point, I'm just going to turn it over, and I'm going to give this over to Brittany, who has prepared some questions that I haven't seen, I don't know anything about, and I really just wanted to do that to be able to bring something authentic and genuine and maybe get a little bit vulnerable. So I will pass it over, and Brittany will run the show today.
Yeah. All right. So I've listened to several of your podcast shows, and you always give such great introductions of your guests that you have on your podcast. So I want to start off the podcast with saying, how would you introduce yourself?
Oh, that's very tough. I think that, without getting super in depth to it, but I think I would definitely highlight my 15 years of military experience. Definitely my background as a master resilience trainer in the National Guard, and that I was able to use that training to actually train a unit of over 600 soldiers during our deployment. And really, that was my introduction into getting into the holistic health space and the wanting to help people in their journey, because one of those skills in master resilience training is goal setting. And so through getting feedback from soldiers, that really is kind of what made me fall in love with doing this and helping people. So I would definitely highlight that experience. It's such a tough question, but I really think that also when I highlight people, I don't like to just focus on their professional background. So I think that those are important things to highlight in terms of my journey, what brought me here, and what got me to doing the podcast and working on writing a book. But the real important piece that I bring to the table, I think, is my experience as a husband and as a father and as a friend, and as a mentor for people that I've worked with or in business. And so I think those are the really big, important pieces to highlight, because it's that learning through real life experiences that I think is what creates the value in the conversation.
Yeah. And it's never easy to introduce ourselves and boast on the things that we're good at or not good at. So I think that was good. Yeah.
Ooh.
Okay. So moving on from your question about your past and just things that you've done throughout your life, what has led you to this place today, to this exact moment in your life?
I think that I need clarity on the question. So are we talking about what's led me to this point with the podcast or professionally, or because there's a lot of different things
I think we have to go with the podcast. What led you to this place, to this podcast, to help people, and why?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's always been a little bit of wanting to find a way to impact people's lives. Like I've always had a heart of service. My very first job was working in a restaurant. And so having that background of service and wanting to impact people and help people's lives, that's kind of the beginning foundation. But the true beginning of the journey was when I did master resilience training, and I really got into those skills. And what it is, 14 different skills that encompass what they call core competencies. So 7 core competencies that those skills work to develop. And those are things like resilience and self-awareness and character strengths. And so I fell in love with that training. I realized so much about myself and the ability to apply those skills in my own life. So it's the first time that I did a military training where I felt like this isn't just focused on trying to develop me professionally or for my job. This is something I can take home and be a better human with.
Yeah.
And so I fell in love with the training for that. And then after that, I deployed not long after. And I was given the opportunity to be the master resilience trainer for 600 people who are also deployed and going through one of the most challenging times of their life, being away from home and family and friends and like facing all these different challenges. And so when I would get feedback from soldiers that would say, I practiced the skill that you taught and it made a difference in my life. That was so impactful to me and made me feel so fulfilled and gave me so much purpose. And I said, I want to do something with this. I remember talking to one of my friends that, I worked out with a lot during the deployment. And I remember saying, like, I think it would be cool to get into like life coaching or personal coaching or, something like that. But I had no idea where to start. So that was the beginning. That's kind of what planted the seed and starting to fall in love with that. And then after I got back home, the next kind of step and what brought it back around was about a year later. I said, I don't want to keep putting off trying to do something. And so the first thing that I did was I put together a goal setting class at the Chamber of Commerce. I had made some connections and I just reached out to the Chamber of Commerce and asked if I could do a free class to be able to just practice the skill and get in front of people and build some connection. And that was a great experience, but it immediately inspired me to continue working toward it. And so that's when I said, like, okay, I got some positive feedback from this. I think I want to like go do a podcast now. I think I want to take it to that next. And so that was a complete starting from scratch. I said, I want to do a podcast, and I had no recording experience. I didn't know what equipment I needed, no background. And I didn't really, have any direct contacts that had done a podcast to reach out to either. So it really just started with research and figuring out what do I need to do, what equipment will I need, how do I do this, what platforms do I need, how can you monetize a podcast? Like, so there's just a ton of research I started doing. But it was funny because you were there and you saw it as I was talking about doing this, and I said, I'm going to do this podcast, and we're getting ready for it. At the same time, we're finishing our basement, and we didn't have a room or a place to actually set up yet. And the finishing of the basement was delayed. So I ended up recording the first episode in our closet in our bedroom.
You'll never know.
And I think it's so important to share that part of the journey because people don't always see the struggle and the hoops that you jump through and the research and the not knowing. And a lot of times it's the not knowing is what holds people back from starting because they're not sure where to start. And so I think just by finding a way to do research, like it's so easy to go Google whatever question that you have, whatever it is that you don't know, and just start. And that will literally lead you down a rabbit hole of other things that you start to explore. And you just become more and more familiar and comfortable with the content the more that you continue to look into it.
Yeah. Well, I want to stop you right there. So you talked about like life coaching and being a life coach. At what age do you think, if you would have known about a life coach, like when do you think that would have made an impact on your life? Like,
honestly, for me, not having a dad growing up, I could have used a life coach or, a male mentor,
Mm-hmm.
a positive male mentor as a teenager, like as an early teenager, because I was dealing with so many emotions that I didn't understand, but I also had little direction. And the difficult part with that is that I wasn't necessarily in a position for my parents to be like, we should get him
Yeah.
a coach,
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't in the position or the background to even know to have a coach or have someone guide me toward a coach.
Yeah.
And I've shared this story of my guidance counselor. Even the guidance counselor at school was not able to be a coach for me. And I talked about that in my last episode. So I would say part of it depends on like if you have mentorship and guidance growing up or not, because I believe that your family status and the people that you're around and the people that teach and mentor you have an impact. But I would say if not in those teenage years, if you have a good foundation and good people to learn from, then I would say as soon as like college,
Yeah.
or even like once you're out of high school and you're starting to work toward an actual professional career,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best time to start to build that foundation, because a big part of having a coach is having somebody to ask you challenging questions
Yeah.
that get you to think, that get you to understand what actions you need to take and clarify your goals, but also to start to help you identify what habits you want to put in place to start to work toward the things that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And I would also say, coming out of high school, a lot of people don't know where they're trying to go.
Oh yeah, I think high school would have been like a great. I feel like you have a guidance counsel, but like just someone to help you outside of that to, I don't know, like you said, give you the tough questions, like to figure out what you needed or like what, I don't know. Like I went to college and I still didn't know. I still don't know what I want to do, but yeah, I think that would have been a great like through high school to have some kind of coach.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that, like, so you didn't have a life coach. You said like you didn't kind of grow up without your dad. Who were the three most influential people in your life, like from young to now?
Oh man, that's such a tough question, because there's been so many impactful people
Yeah,
throughout my journey.
yeah.
Um,
But there has
and
to be like the top ones that kind of like. There's a lot of people that have had like an impact on your life
mhm.
in different aspects, but
Oh
like
yeah.
who are the people that have made you basically who you are today?
So as a kid, um, I don't know how I would have survived without my brother. He was the male figure that I had to look up to, and
Mm-hmm.
although he was going through the same things and he was struggling, like he was my anchor as a kid.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't learn all the right lessons from him, but he's what I had.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I have to say my brother is my first one early
Yeah.
on, because he was the male figure that was a constant in my life.
Mm-hmm.
From my mom and dad getting divorced very early, and then having my first stepdad and them divorcing as I graduated sixth grade, and us moving to a different area, switching schools, and not long after getting a new stepdad. So there was a lot of confusion, but my brother was what was there throughout
Yeah.
childhood. So I have to throw him in there. Um, your dad has been the later part of my life in helping me become a man, like, and understanding what it means to be a father, and understand what it means to provide, and understanding what it means to be a fixer, as we call it in our house. I knew nothing about how to use tools, build things, put things together. And I mean, very early on, we got our first house together, and he was over helping us build our deck, and I'm just
Yeah.
learning tool after tool, and he's got a tool for everything. So he's pulling it all out. But I didn't just pick it all up right away, but a little bit at a time. We took on project after project, and I mean, now recently I was able to build an entertainment center in our house by myself, and that was a very like rewarding experience.
Yeah.
and I know that I would not have been there without him.
Yeah, now I can't get you away from projects. You're like, all right, what's the next project? What are we doing next?
Yeah,
I
but
like it though.
so there's more to that too, though, because I learned the handyman work and I learned the parenting, but him also just as a friend and coming up from an adverse background as well, and us being able to talk about the struggles and the things that we went through growing up and the problems with our families and stuff like that together. So to have him to talk to and to lean on with other struggles has been crucial too. So he's really been like the father that I didn't have growing up.
Yeah.
And then the next I say is a collective. My third, and I have to say the Ferguson family as a third, because when I was a kid, one of my best friends growing up, we met in kindergarten, and so we were friends from kindergarten until now. And throughout childhood, I would stay with them a lot. We would ride a bus together sometimes. We went to the same elementary school, the same high school. But his house was kind of an escape for me a lot of times. But I learned a lot from his family, and a lot of the stuff that I would do, they would call me out on, like where I was sagging my pants and stuff. And I knew before I walked in their door, I was pulling my pants up and tightening my belt, or I was going to get called out. And so they taught me some really foundational lessons about work ethic. His mom gave me a job with her company as I was in high school and transitioning into college. And a really big, huge, impactful piece that I'll forever be grateful to them for is as I was going to college, I took out every loan that I could take. And I was still short my first semester of college by about $1,000. And I had worked hard. I had done miscellaneous jobs over the summer to try to make money, but I was still short. And his family paid $1,000 for me to be able to go to school that first year. And it was that was such a powerful thing for them to believe in me enough to do that.
Yeah.
I still get emotional about it because it meant so much to me. And that made me say, like, I'm going to find my way. I'm not going to have to rely on somebody again.
Yeah.
That created my real drive, I think, because beyond that, I picked up work study and an internship. And then the following semester, I joined the National Guard for the benefits to be able to help pay for school. And I figured out how to do it myself. And so I have to throw them in there for getting me to that point.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good with family. So, our introduction to each other was kind of bumpy and I don't know if we'll ever mention on the podcast or not, but he never wanted to get married or have kids or anything. Just wanted girlfriends. So how have your views on love and partnership changed over time?
So I'll take it back to this. I pointed out my brother for a very specific reason in the last question, and he guided me. But you got to also think I was being taught about things by a teenager, and I was being taught about things earlier than I should have known.
Because you and your brother are 6?
No, we're about 4.5 years apart.
Okay.
And so with that, I was exposed to things earlier than I should have been, and was around a lot of things that I shouldn't have been. And I didn't have the right view early on in life of relationships, healthy relationships. And I was around so much divorce. I mean, my mom married my dad twice.
Yeah.
And I had 2 stepfathers. And with my last stepfather, they had miscellaneous women that lived with us as well. And so I was around very abnormal relationships growing up. And that made me, not having a father around made me very scared to have kids.
Yeah.
I didn't want kids. I felt like partially I didn't know how to be a father since I didn't have one. It took me a while to realize that that's exactly what qualified me to be a father, because I learned what not to be.
Yeah.
I still had a lot of other things to learn too, but
I think we're still learning day by day.
Yeah, the learning never stops on that. Relationship wise, I really think it's about finding the right person, like the person that makes you want to change and want to be better.
Yeah.
And I hadn't found that till I met you. I was in and out of a lot of relationships growing up. Not all of them the best or the healthiest relationships, and I also recognize my part in a lot of the unhealthiness in a lot of those relationships now. But really, I think it's about being open and communicating and like finding somebody that you can trust enough to like be yourself around.
Yeah. That accepts like you 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because until you're not trying to hide stuff from a person or feel like, well, if I open up to them and they leave me, I'm just going to be hurt. So you hold everything in.
Yeah.
And you take on that creates way more stress on you than you need, but it'll be so hard to truly like feel and receive the love that you deserve until you're willing to like let the guard down and open up and hope that they accept you for who you are. And I've been lucky and fortunate that
your guard was very, very strong.
and I'll say this, anybody that I tell our story of getting together, it was like your patience with putting up with me going through crazy stuff, because like I had just come out of a fairly long-term relationship when we met. I was not looking for a relationship at the time, so the timing wasn't right either.
Yeah.
And so there was so many challenges, but for whatever reason you saw something in me enough to stick around, and I'm very thankful that you did, because once I finally let my guard down,
yeah, look where you are now.
Yeah.
Yes. No. Now we have 2 beautiful kids. So
health, fitness, fat loss, sleep, all goals that are impacted by the fuel you put into your body. I've tried meal prepping at home, and I've tried multiple meal prep companies, including those that deliver, but I'll be honest, nothing has been better than the meals I get from Prepping with Peppers. They offer fresh, never frozen meals on a weekly rotating basis, so you don't have to get tired of eating the same meals over and over again. So save yourself some time for the things that matter most by ordering your meals at preppingwithpeppers.com.
Okay, so leading off of that question, what are some of your biggest challenges in relationships?
My biggest challenges in relationships?
Mm-hmm. Like your friends or like family, but like, and we've had this conversation before, like you treat like your friend relationships are different than like our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of spoke on that, but like, yeah, what do you think like your biggest challenges are in just relationships? Or
I think having clear boundaries is really important in relationships. And I think that until you have friends that you feel comfortable with saying no to without having to have an excuse or a reason.
Yeah.
I think that that's the most important thing in a relationship. And I remember, some friendships that we've built early on in those friendships, being invited to things, and we would have conversations and question, like, should we say no to that? Like, or I don't want to hurt their feelings or this or that,
Yeah.
And when you're focused on like whether or not a no that's good for you is going to hurt someone else's feelings, that's not fostering like a good strong relationship. A good strong relationship, like we all have our own personal things in life, and sometimes it might be like, I just don't feel like doing anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an excuse. Like, I just don't feel like doing anything. It doesn't mean that I don't love you. It doesn't mean that I'm not your friend. Like, if it's something you really need me there for, I'm going to be there regardless of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if it's like, can y'all hang out? And I don't feel like hanging out. Like,
I also think that comes with like age too. Like as we get older, like we realize like time is like more precious, and we only have limited time for the things like that we really want to do outside of like work and like taking care of ourselves. So we have to like be very selective on the things we say yes to. And if it's not 100% yes, then it's a no. Like, and I feel more at peace in that now than I used to, because I used to have like, I'm a people pleaser, so I have guilt all the time. Not saying I just still don't have, don't have any guilt, but it is getting easier too.
Yeah. And so I'll add to that as well, just with the recent conversation that we had in terms of throughout the day, like at work, with the relationships at work, I have a lot more energy during the day. You know, I'm rested and I feel good, and my battery is more drained by the time I get home.
Yeah.
And so the emotional intelligence that I've been able to foster all day with my relationships at work, it's not always as strong. And then you throw in frustrations with the kids and like things that they do sometimes, creating an additional challenge that drains the battery. I would say for anybody going through that, like a lot of times, like our spouse is the one that sees and handles the worst side of us, because they're getting the lowest energy version of ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think that trying to find ways to recharge that battery, to recognize it. We've talked about the, what percent are you at today? Like there's other people that talk about that in terms of, recognizing each other's energy.
Yeah.
And like, if you don't have a lot to bring to the table today, that means I have to step up with whatever I have to give, and vice versa. And so that's where the teamwork and the relationship is so crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to piggyback off that question one more time. What 3 things do you think are most important in a relationship?
Communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
If you can't communicate, there's nothing.
So, I say communication very intentionally. Not only have I talked about it in over half of the episodes that I've done at a minimum, nearly every guest that I bring on the show talks about the importance of communication. But like when we have an argument or a disagreement, it's not until we are open enough and willing enough to communicate with each other that we like work through it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that takes a day or two or however long. And
if you had it my way, it would have been right there and then.
Yeah. So it's really important to understand people, because I'm the type of person that wants time to process, to think, to try to practice my resiliency skills. And you're very much the person that's like, let's solve this immediately.
Yes, I am.
But I know that to have the most emotionally intelligent response, that I need to gather my thoughts. I need to process. I need to think through, like, why am I thinking the way that I'm thinking? Is this the right way to think in this situation? What are you thinking? And trying to consider your perspective.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot.
It does. But big emotions like drain me, which is why I need to solve it right then. Like.
Yeah. So that one's important. But it really is our communication that continuously builds my confidence in our relationship. Because when we have a problem, when we communicate through it, I always feel stronger on the other side.
Yeah.
Knowing that like we've overcome hard things, we've overcome disagreements, we've overcome challenges, and all of that is because we continue to communicate.
Yeah.
I believe that the relationships that fail are when people stop being willing to communicate and being willing to listen. So I'm gonna throw maybe listening falls in with that communication, but I think we can make listening a second category.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it takes a whole nother skill to listen, like to use your ears instead of your mouth.
Yeah. So listening is part of communication, I think, but at the same time, the majority of people just are waiting for their turn to speak.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people that I listen to, a lot of great topics about communication talk about that. When you're having a conversation with somebody, try your best to quiet your mind. Not be sitting thinking about how am I going to respond to this or what your response is, but rather just receiving the information from that person. And when you do that, it allows you to actually hear them and like process and to show them that you care, because they can tell by the way that you respond whether or not you were paying attention or you respond with something that has nothing to do with what they were just saying, with what they were getting across to you. And then that tells them that what they're saying to you is not important. And that impacts that relationship. And so it also, listening is important in those overcoming disagreements. Because if I'm only trying to get across my point of view in a disagreement and get you to see my side of it, and I'm not listening to try to understand your perspective, then it makes it harder to get past. And so I definitely think communication, listening, and I want to say reliability. Like, reliability impacts trust. Reliability impacts the way that you feel about that person. Like, I think that in a relationship, if I want to know that if you tell me you're going to do something, that I can have confidence in you that you're going to do it. If you tell me you're going to be somewhere, that I can have confidence that you're going to be there.
Yeah.
And if ever you're not, it should be to the point that I have that level of confidence that I know the only reason that you're not there is for a very significant reason. You know what I mean? So when you build reliability in a relationship and knowing that you can truly count on, and maybe it's like a reliability / trust. Mm-hmm. The reliability piece is a huge piece of what builds that trust.
Yeah.
And the communication and the showing your willingness to listen and understand. And so I would go with the communication, the listening, and reliability trust.
Love it. All right, so let's kind of like move away from relationships and go into like personal fitness. What was like the biggest like turning point for you to like focus on your like fitness and health and all the things?
Yeah, so I mean, I had a focus in college when I was playing basketball, but I had no guidance, knowledge, education on nutrition. Mm-hmm. And so I've been physically active throughout my life, playing sports growing up, and playing basketball in college and being in the military. A lot of the physical piece I've had. So that's been a part of me. I will say that like there's been periods where I've fallen off. Yeah. And I got much more serious about the physical fitness piece. Maybe it started in 2015 when I started pursuing my personal trainer certification. Mm-hmm. I got serious about it for a little bit and allowed it to fade some. And part of that was because I didn't stick with it because it was a challenge to build up a clientele. Yeah. To be a personal trainer individually, and the local gyms and doing training at them, I had started at one, but the like pay for those was not significant really. Yeah. And so they just kind of turned me off, and I was like, yeah, there's other ways that I can make more money, and it was money focused at that time, so I allowed it to fall to the side. But I think the most important part of my fitness journey was starting to learn about nutrition. Mm-hmm. And so that started really multiple times with you in your journey. Yeah. So you know, I would say a good piece of where it started is doing the 21-day fix containers through Beachbody.
Yeah, probably when we did 75 hard. Like, I think that was like the first time you really had to like dial in on any kind of like nutrition, like actual like program.
Yeah, well, so the containers was the first
That's what we
program
did.
that I dialed in on. So we
Yeah.
did that first, but the containers were good. I got probably the leanest that I've ever gotten, and that's what we did during 75
Mhm.
hard. And I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Because I learned like, wow, I've not been eating enough vegetables in my life.
Yeah, it's very good, like basic, like introduction to just eating healthy and the right things.
It gets you to a more appropriate level of balance
Yeah.
between the different food groups. And so that was fantastic. I got the most cut that I've ever been in my life by the end of 75 hard doing the 21-day fixed containers. And that was the introduction that got me more serious. Then after 75 hard, we started to explore macro tracking.
Mhm.
And we had so many questions about that. And that was a whole new thing. And it was confusing and frustrating up front and like trying to understand and figure it out. And so that became one of the most important pieces, though, of the journey, because learning about macros and how to calculate them and the why is what changed everything, because now I understand the importance of food for fuel.
Yeah.
And like specifically fueling performance, and like why I need a certain amount of protein and why I need a certain amount of carbs and fats. So I really think the nutrition piece has been the biggest part of the physical fitness journey. And then more recently, just starting to set more intentional, specific goals. Growing up, it was always just about playing sports.
Yeah.
But now I need a new physical challenge to work toward, and on the physical fitness side. So by setting new challenges or something to aim for, or a new program to complete, like that helps keep the physical fitness piece fresh.
Well, I know the challenge. Do you want to tell everybody else the challenge? It helps like keep you, accountable.
So full accountability. I love it. Man, you're a good interviewer. You have a future in this, I think, if you wanted it.
Yeah.
So I've decided that I want to start to create a healthy, like physical fitness challenge for my birthday every year. So we're about to do a 22-mile hike on my birthday this year for USA Cares. And really thinking about that, and was like, oh, that the date moved to my birthday week, and I was like, that's fantastic. Like, now we've got a physical fitness challenge. I said, all right, now we need something to work toward for next year. So my physical fitness challenge that I'm working toward for next year is completing a Spartan trifecta throughout the year next year. But I want to do it competitively, so I'm going to start really pushing myself here toward the end of the year and early next year for a Spartan sprint in March. To ramp up to doing a beast and a super throughout the next year.
Exciting.
Yeah.
So with comes like health and fitness, then you got like mental health. So like, how has your perspective on mental health changed throughout your life?
Yeah. So as a kid, my mom tried to take me to therapy for a brief period of time. And I just never built a level of trust with them. I had a lot of like anger and emotions that like I didn't know how to communicate and hadn't figured out then.
And at that age, it's like hard to know what even to do with your emotion.
Oh yeah.
So.
And I was given ADD medicine, and I really didn't like being given medicine because I didn't feel like anything was wrong with me. But my grades had fallen. I was struggling with emotions. And the truth is, there was a lot of things going on at home and a lot of emotions that I didn't know how to deal with.
Yeah.
But I didn't like being forced to take medicine or being told I needed to take medicine. And so I would pretend to take my ADD medicine and I would not take it. And But I knew that the reason that they had me doing that is because of my grades having fallen, and they thought it was because of ADD. So I started trying in school. And by the end of that year, I got straight A's. And
No, that was the medicine, and like they didn't know.
And then at the end of the year, they were like, the medicine must really be working and helping. And I was like, I haven't taken the medicine the whole time. So that was a mental health piece. There was a lot growing up, but I didn't really get into mental health or understanding it until I just got tired of dealing with my own anger issues.
Yeah.
Like I struggled with relationships, struggled with my emotions, and it reached a point where I remember looking into the mirror and just being like so sad and angry and unhappy with myself, and I was like, this is not who I want to be. Especially with knowing the struggles that my dad had and all of his problems. And I was actually going for a training in Washington State. So I was flying from Kentucky to Washington. And when I was in the airport, and just after this moment that I had looking in the mirror, I'm walking through the airport past a bookstore, and I see a book titled Anger. And I had a little bit of time. I wasn't in a rush to get to the flight or anything. I stopped and I picked up the book and I read the back of it, and I was like, maybe this can teach me something. Maybe this can like show me something, a better way to understand and to process this emotion. And the truth is, understanding emotions more now, I labeled everything as anger, but it was so much more.
Yeah.
Like anger was the big one that was easy to identify, but there was a lot more going on.
Yeah.
But reading that book was a starting point. And then doing master resilience training and learning more about resilience and mental toughness and being able to like understand that you can adjust your thinking and learn about thinking traps that we get into and all of those different things, like took it to the next level. And then I, started reading a bunch of professional development books and listening to podcasts and different things, because I just became more and more passionate about it. I wanted to learn more and more.
Yeah.
And now it's come to the point where like I want to continue to learn so that I can continue to help people in a better way.
Yeah. I think that's good. Okay. So if you could be remembered in life for one thing, what would that one thing be?
Oh, if I could be remembered for one thing, I want to be remembered for being a good father.
Yeah.
We've already talked about that some.
Yeah.
The lack of presence of my father in my life. I remember nights of, crying and wishing that I had my dad, or seeing somebody else's relationship with their dad and feeling jealous or feeling like I was missing something. And I mean, that lasted me for such a long time. I held on to that for such a long time.
Yeah.
And that's a pain that like I will never forget. But having the opportunity to be a father now is the most important role that I'll ever have in my life.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing that I'll ever do. And that's where I feel I can make the greatest impact, because I know everything that I missed out on.
Yeah. Raising little humans. Yeah. Giving back.
Yeah.
So then this probably just kind of piggies back off on that, but like what inspires you to carry on? Like to do the things that you're doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've, in the New Year's Go Get It resource seminar that I did this past year, when I got into the piece of talking about finding your why bigger than your excuses, a very common why for people is their kids, and my kids are my why, a huge piece of it anyway. There's more behind it. There's other things too, but like that's the big one. That's the number one.
Yeah.
And I want them to see me working hard. I want them to see me building things. I want them to see me being a good friend and a good husband. And I want them to see me communicating well, because as much as we tell them to do things, sometimes it's the things that they see that they pick up on the most. And so what keeps me pushing forward and what keeps me being willing to wake up early or to record a podcast at 9 o'clock instead of laying in bed is to know that like I have the opportunity to change my family tree and to build a legacy and to teach them the things that I wasn't able to be taught.
Yeah.
So that everything that we build, we can pass down and give them a higher step to start from. And give them a head start in life to be able to pass on to their kids. And I think that when you can get past, when you can recognize that like our purpose in life is not just to serve ourselves. And so when you can be more selfless and put your own needs aside and recognize that like, I'm not just here to live this life. I'm here to try to build more for once I'm gone. And to leave something behind that helps people.
So we've kind of hit on relationships and health and fitness and mental health and a little bit about your past. But is there anything else that you'd like to share that I didn't ask before we wrap it up?
There's one thing that I want to share.
Okay.
And that's really, first off, thank you. Because I know you were a little nervous coming into this too.
Oh, absolutely.
But thank you for, taking the time to put together questions while it's been a busy season for us. Thank you for supporting me in doing this, because this takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. But I appreciate you being able to see the vision and being supportive and understanding what we're working toward together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so a huge thank you on that. And I haven't told you this yet, but I also plan to bring you back on for another episode.
Oh, great.
Where I get to interview you.
Woo!
Since you've done so great tonight. So truly, I try my best to tell you all the time, but I appreciate you more than you'll ever know.
Yeah.
And thank you again for your time, for the questions, for helping me be a little bit vulnerable and share some of the story with the hopes that like it builds some connection that helps people in their journey.
I think we hit a couple like good points and things that people didn't know. So.
And with that, thank you all for tuning in, allowing us to be a part of your journey. Make sure that you like, subscribe, definitely share today's episode. There's a lot of vulnerability. There's some emotion. There's a lot of personal background. But there are so many lessons throughout my journey that you can take away and apply to yours. And understand that you can come from an adverse background and choose a different path. It requires work and it's not easy. And it's a lot of books and Google searches, and there's not always somebody there to teach you the thing that you need to know. But if you can be willing to seek out what you don't know, you can start to journey on that new path. So make sure you share it to be able to impact somebody else's life, and comment with your thoughts and questions to join the conversation, and let's grow.